My notes are gone. Howdy! Welcome to Rebuilding Hollers, come hell or high waters. My name is Stephanie Johnson, and I will be your host for the evening. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to share with you the truth about what is really happening here in Western North Carolina. We have followers following us on Facebook, X, YouTube, and Kick. Thank y'all so much for joining us tonight. If you have any questions during the podcast for myself or our amazing guest, Mark, just use hashtag rebuilding to ask us any questions. And we'll be thankful for your questions. We're going to deep dive into some crazy stuff tonight. Really, everything that we're dealing with here is pretty crazy. And so I'm excited. I'm most excited for my first guest. And I cannot wait to bring him on. But first, I would like to give you a couple updates for what's going on at Rebuilding Hollers this week. We had an incredible week. We did get some more projects. So we are at 497 projects that need our assistance. And that is here in Yancey and Mitchell County. Project 3 has their foundation, their footers dug. They're waiting on some inspections. They're dealing with some septic things that we've got to get worked out. So it's very much drawn out there, but we're getting through it. Project number 8 has got his footers are dug. His block is on site. So he is almost coming out of the ground. This week, project number 9 joined our top of the list. He's had some con artist activity, some crazy things going on, and we just had to go over there and say, okay, we got you. Don't worry. So his footers are poured. Half his block is done. Our block mason, our incredible block mason, is taking over that project to start Thursday morning. So his foundation will be done. Then we'll get into his plumbing. Project number 12 is coming along. We're hoping to have their slab poured very soon. That one's going to be a barn-dominium, which will be my first barn-dominium I'm most excited about. Project 118 is still moving along. That is our Mountain Heritage Cougar Carpenters building with the construction technology program. Got to see Project 118 this week. They are staying in an RV. And so I went to visit and noticed that it was like 1,000 degrees in there. And I said, this isn't going to work. So I'm now on a mission to get a bunch of AC units. I need the floor units or window units. Because, we have over 300 community members living in campers and RVs, and those air systems don't last for long, and it is hot. So with Project 118 and all of my other projects in RVs, I've got to make sure, in the winter we're keeping them warm. In the summer, we've got to keep them cool. So be on the lookout to how you can help me with that. And into that, I would like to tell you a little bit about our guest. So today we are going to be meeting Lieutenant Colonel retired Mark Owens. He served in the Army Infantry for 21 years, during which the time he was deployed on peacekeeping tours to Africa and the Balkans, as well as multiple combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He retired from the USSOCOM in 2019, where he managed the Special Operation Forces, ammunitions, weapons, and Visual Augmentation System programs. Lieutenant Colonel Mark Owens is currently serving as a strategy officer in the defense sector and is president of O2 Defense. I am so thankful to introduce you all to Mark Owens. He is a resident of Yancey, Mitchell County. He splits his time between here and Florida, but he's been here through every bit of this with us, and I'm so excited to introduce y'all. So, Mr. Russ, pretty please bring in our guest, Mark Owens. Hey, Mark.
Hello, friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing amazing. But before we get into the podcast, I kind of wanted to invoke deity, and with your permission, go ahead and open with a prayer.
Absolutely. Right? Please start us off with prayer.
All right, fantastic. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you today with grateful hearts, recognizing your unwavering grace and love as we gather here to support the Rebuilding Hollers philanthropy. We thank you for the strength and resilience you've given our community in the wake of Helene's challenges. We express our deepest gratitude for our first responders and dedicated volunteers who selflessly serve during this time of need. Their courage and compassion remind us of your light in our darkest moments. As we embark on this journey together, we ask for your blessings upon this podcast. May it inspire hope, foster unity, and encourage prosperity as we work to heal and rebuild. Guide our words and our actions so they reflect your will, God, touching the hearts of all who listen and within the realm of this broadcast. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. When you first said that you wanted to open us up in prayer, I was so honored by that because, I've actually never really prayed in public, but I pray often. I pray all the time. I'm
Stephanie, I
constantly
tell you
talking to
what,
God.
I was never someone that would hold someone's hand and pray with them in public beforehand because I felt like it's a little bit of look at me.
Right.
But I met a lady with stage 4 cancer in line, and we were waiting to talk to FEMA, and she told me her story, and I told her my story, and I prayed with her in public. And honestly, some people have a gift for it, and I don't. But in that
No,
moment, I
that's
felt like the word
beautiful.
just came, I'm 10 times the believer now that I was prior to the storm. And sometimes you have to be tried and tested to be found that you're true. And so,
That is
the storm was one of the worst things that ever happened to me in my life. It certainly top 3 bad things, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
look back after 8 months and I'm grateful for all the things that happened, not for the pain or for the suffering, but for the lessons learned and the opportunity to transform and be stronger. And I think many of us are going through that now. I don't know where our audience is in the beginning, middle, or end of that transformation process, but we're all a work in progress. But I think now I look at it as one of the great challenges of my life, and I feel like we're up to that challenge, and I'm grateful for it.
I think so too. I've always believed in God. I've always known He's real. But during the storm and what has happened and how folks would just come and pray over us, and they would hold my hands, and I could electrically feel it coming through my
Mhm.
hands, and it would recharge me in a way. And of course, the thousands of miracles I've seen, it's incredible. Real quick, I do want to let the folks on Kick know that we are having some issues streaming. If y'all could check us out at our YouTube channel, Rebuilding Hollers, or Facebook, you'll be able to follow us there until they get that back. But yeah, Mark, what we were talking about with God, I mean, God is real and He is with us every day. And what He's been able to do, I feel like, He sent all of America to help us. He touched people's hearts to say, take them food, take them building materials, take them what they need. And people did. They listened, they helped us. And I know that God did that because at every other level, I feel we've been failed, but not by God. And I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful for that. So,
Yep,
so
it's
yes,
nice.
so thank you. I'm most
One of, one
excited.
of the one of the great memories I have in the first days of the storm when everything was bad, everything was existential crisis. It really was life in jeopardy. I
Yes.
remember driving my side by side down the remains of 197. And I look off to the right and I see a gang of people in the front yard of this destroyed house, and they're out there holding hands. They have their heads bowed in prayer. And I was
Yes.
like, that's not something you see every day, but man, it
No.
feels awesome to see that. And you're kind of getting some side effect from it from over here too. It was great. But it
Yeah.
was one of those things you need. I needed that in that moment. I needed to see that.
It has. It fills us up in a way that is indescribable. When and the best prayer, my favorite prayer to tell you about is it was a Pentecostal church out of West Virginia, and it was
Mhm.
these little congregation, elderly congregation. One lady was like in her late 90s, and so they had brought us a bunch of supplies, and they said, "Can we pray with you?" And at this time, I'm all about the praying. Yes, please hold my hand and pray because it was it was so hard. And the
Mhm.
preacher started praying, and then 15 other people started praying. So it was like, it was incredible. I've never been prayed over like that before. And I've never felt, I mean, like God was there. There was no doubt in
Mhm.
my mind. God was right there. And there was 100 voices going, and they were all praying. And that was life-changing for me. That was life-changing to know, I tell people when they ask, they say, I don't have money to help, or I don't have this. I say, pray. Just pray
Yep.
because God hears you, and He's real and He's helping us, So
Absolutely.
in all of our blue and all the bad things that we have to talk about tonight, that's the one true thing that I believe in with my whole soul, is that God
Yep.
is real and He has not forgot about us, and He's not going to let anybody else forget about us either.
That's right.
So,
It's at some
so I'm
point I had some pictures to share from before, during, and after, and I had, I mean, you said miracles. I feel like I had kind of a small miracle happen on my property and in my group of people. So I look forward to sharing that here we get a lull, I'll share some pictures and
That
talk about it.
sounds great. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about, because well, I'd like to hear a little bit about, so what's impressed me most is your understanding about what our reality is. But before we get deep into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what makes your understanding of this so in depth in your
Sure. So I certainly don't claim any great expertise, but I mean, my background is I was born in High Point, North Carolina. I grew up in Charlotte. God brought me to Pensacola ultimately. In between growing up in Charlotte and living in Pensacola and Burnsville, I went to school at University of North Carolina, Charlotte. I got an undergraduate degree, and then I was at ROTC on ROTC scholarship, and I commissioned as a second lieutenant of infantry in May of 1998. And I was in the Army for 21 years. And, probably just after midway through my military career, I fractured some vertebrae in my neck, and combat vehicle accident. And then I was not ever going to be Captain America again, if I ever was, which is doubtful, but I wanted to be. But it was clear that I wasn't going to have
for it.
Well, yeah,
You got the beard
that's
for
a different character, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, maybe. Yeah, true.
That's right. But it was I needed to change what I was doing in the Army, and so I worked in a functional area called acquisitions. And acquisition guys and gals, they work with science and academia and industry to build technologies and nurture technology for military consumption. Like the Army doesn't build tanks and rifles and helicopters; they work with our industrial partners to do that. And so that allowed me to eventually get my master's, through an Army program. And then when I retired from SOCOM in 2019, I was able to roll right into industry and continue with that kind of work. And I think that's given me a variety of experiences and work with people, from the hardest, most blue collar job in the Army up to very, very senior executive service level and 4-star type of offices. And so it's given me a breadth of experiences, and I've been a bunch of places. You mentioned the Balkans and then the wartime deployments as well. And one thing I want to open with is, I mean, God, when I first saw what happened to our valley, I was dumbstruck by it. I mean, 5 years ago, I thought I was an expert adult, and someone went and turned the complexity level up. I mean, it's gotten so hard since COVID, and then this came on top of it. But I remember fighting my way into the valley, and the volunteer firefighters, thank God Angela and I were both at a conference during the storm, or we would have been killed if we'd have been in that cabin when the flood hit. But we had the Burnsville Volunteer Fire Department brought me up to my place, and on the way, it was amazing, the destruction. Like, I mean, I've been in places that we've deliberately destroyed. And, we can tear a block or, buildings and blocks and cities up pretty well. But I'll say that all the weapons that have been made by man pale in comparison by what Mother Nature can do in a bad night, or after a long week and a bad night. It was like being ground zero at Hiroshima a couple of days after the bomb went off. Like I knew exactly where I was, but I didn't recognize anything. It was just, I was gobsmacked by it. And so I think, in order for people to understand this, you'll never be able to explain it. You have to firsthand experience it. And we met so many people that wanted to help, and people say, like, 3 weeks afterwards, they go, "Hey, are you guys back to normal yet?" And you're like, no. I mean, people's lives are still in jeopardy, but you don't really have a way to communicate that in a calm, collective manner and not alienate people. So you've always got to be really careful what you say, because we then so desperately needed help, and we need a different kind of help today. And so it's sort of like this evolving process. Let's say in the first 2 months, we were in what I would only could be characterized as like the tactical phase of operations, where we were really during existential crisis, and we were trying to avert human suffering and the loss of life, because the outrights, we had a couple hundred people die outright in the Carolinas during the storm. And then we had many people maimed and injured. And then we had 50,000, people displaced. And what I was most concerned about early on was the contagion that comes after a flood, because everyone in our communities, although the mountain people and they're resilient and strong and independent, they're still creatures of the 21st century. We're still used to having, running, potable water. We're used to having restaurants and food and places. Even if you have a garden and even you do canning, if your root cellar gets flooded out, all that's out the window. I know that happened to me. Like everything I had as far as like, storm prep and food and first aid and medicines, that stuff was several foot underwater. And I had it in waterproof boxes, but waterproof, like to put in the bed of your truck and go on the road, is different than being underwater, bounced around in a flood. I mean, it's just a whole nother level of waterproofing that's required. So probably 80% of what I think is my prep was destroyed outright. And I think many people fell into that category. But it was just really, really, really incredible the amount of damage we had at inception. And, we didn't lose a road, a bridge, or a power pole or a substation. We literally lost every road, every power pole, every single modern amenity. I talked to some folks from the power company, and when they managed to get in, they build these substations in locations that are geographically unassailable. I mean, they pick them very carefully. They have tremendous civil engineering assets that go into place. And the fellows I talked to, only about 15% of them could even make it in to work because of the roads and sinkholes and mudslides and the personal damage. But they said when they went in, they literally said, I don't know what to do. And that resonated with me. That's why I mentioned I felt like I was a pretty capable person before the storm. And now I realize you're capable in the routine. You might be really capable during the routine. But when this apocalypse that came down on us, I had nothing. I've never felt in my adult life so helpless. And so all I could do is just be a strong back. I mean, I thought my place was destroyed. I looked at my place. I was like, it's destroyed. It's not recoverable. So let's just try to see whose life we can save and what supplies we can bring in and what people we can get out. So we did that, just being basically a strong back during the tactical phase. And then after about 2 months into, I'd say probably solid 6 months, is what I would call the operational phase, is when we started getting like preliminary services back in. Some people, everyone was getting generators and food and fuel and water, and that's great. We had looked like we were going to avert contagion through dysentery and floodwaters and secondary type of staph infections. We had a MASH hospital set up. I mean, like I was blown away with the people that reached out to us. Like Dr. Marley James was connected to me by my friends from high school and college, and podcaster Tracy Beans got me in contact with her, and we set up a MASH site there at the Avery County Airport. And so we were getting some rudimentary systems back in, and that was the beginning of the operational phase. And then now I'd say probably about month 6 and on, we started getting into the strategic rebuilding, where the United States government, the federal forces came in and started really putting in better roads, better temporary bridges, and reinforcing our power distribution and water distribution architectures. But I want to iterate that everything that's in there that's working now is a temporary solution. Like our roads, you get a quarter inch of rain and you get a mudslide across the road, and people think, it's not that big a deal. You're in the mountains. They're used to dealing with stuff like that. Yeah, wait till it's your mom in that ambulance trying to get to the hospital and can't get out of the valley, and suddenly it's a big deal. And so we're looking forward to getting that improvement in the infrastructure back in again, and reliability and power. And there's a lot of people still, like, we're relying on Starlink for internet. All I can say is thank God for Starlink and the distribution of those systems, because so many of us needed it for survival, and so many need it to continue to be employed and have meaningful communications. So we've come a long way, but we have a long way left to go. But to go back to where I was in those first days, I just couldn't believe the amount of damage that was done. And I'll say this, like, here we are 8 months after this. Nature is so incredibly resilient. God is so good. I'm just amazed at the green and the valley and the hills and the things that have come back. But there's still the legacy of the storm. We've got, I don't know how many millions of trees are down, but we lost entire slopes of trees. And so we had the wind, we had the water, we had the earth from the mudslides. I know I had a 3-foot mudslide come to my cabin. We had 17,000 pounds of debris just on my first floor, about 7,000 pounds of debris in my root cellar. And that's in addition to my flooding.
Right.
Sorry, my computer just locked up. I didn't touch my computer for a while, and
you got to touch it.
My screensaver, so I kind of panicked for a second there.
You're okay. You didn't even blink over here.
I'm back. But it was amazing how all of that transpired and how all of that just grew into where we are now. And I honestly thought, it took 80 years for us to get the infrastructure into Appalachia that we enjoyed before the storm. And I say enjoyed because, it can come, it can go, but we had confidence that if we lost something, it'd be reestablished in hours or days, not necessarily weeks, months, etc.
Right. And we didn't just lose a little bit of power. I mean, the power lines followed the road. The road was destroyed. So the road was gone. I think we lost something like 5,000 power poles.
Yep.
And then at this time, they've only brought back 2,000 power. So everyone has power now, but with half the poles. So we're at 2,000 poles.
I know. It's like having a bridge with 1/3 the amount of structure that you need for normal use, right? So they definitely, I'm not gonna say they did it on the cheap because there's only a finite amount of these, and it's not just the power poles, but it's the substations, and it's the transformers, and it's the line, and it's the insulators, and it's the linemen. I mean, for weeks, for 45 or 60 days, we had guys working 100, 120-hour weeks. Yes. I mean, they were sleeping for 4 hours a night inside their trucks. They were putting their lives in danger to reestablish, some utilities, but they only had the resources that were currently available. And we haven't gone back and readdressed that. So we're looking forward to federal and state, funds to come in and replace the infrastructure. But I'm glad you mentioned that because that will get taken care of. That's something that the federal government and the state government has an obligation to acknowledge. And although it takes them a while to get to it because it's a massive undertaking, what they don't focus on is driveways and culverts and personal bridges and septic systems. I mean, we didn't have power in my cabin for 120 days, not because there's no power to be had, but we had to rewire the cabin. And every receptacle, I had receptacles that weighed 5 pounds because they were full of sand. So we had to take those out. So that's not just me. We had 50,000 homes affected. I'd say conservatively, let's say 5% of them fall into that category. I'm sure it's more than that. But you think about just the Ace Hardwares and the Summit Supply and the Lowe's, and suddenly there's a rush on everything you need to build a home. There's just not enough material in that region to even begin to support it. So we had an absolute rush on those kinds of material, and even more so on people that are fully qualified to put them in. Because I'm handy, but I'm not going to pour concrete and put steel reinforced, beams in. That's not in my modus operandi. That's not my background. So, and then there's a finite number of people in the whole country that have that skill set. So, we were talking, I think on Wednesday, and you said someone made the comment, I think a hard-hearted comment. They said, God, it's been 8 months, get over it.
Right.
And
we got that on one of our videos.
Let's just put aside that that's probably some angry person in their parents' basement, and that they're upset with themselves, and so they're upset with everything in the world. Let's peel that onion back a layer and go look at it. How long does it take to build a house? You have a construction background.
Yes. 6
to 12 months. And that's if you have the materials, financing, and site preparation in place.
And inspections and everything. There's policies and procedures, just like in the military and construction. You can't build your roof before you build your foundation. You can't put in your electrical before you have your studs in, so there's
you got to have the foundation before you put the roof up, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, that's how it works.
And that's like, I'm just using that build a house example from flatlands. Everything has a higher degree of complexity when you add slope to it, right? So we've got 15 to 60 degree slopes, and the site preparation is much more exhaustive. The civil engineering to go into it's much more exhaustive. The cost is more exhaustive. And if you look at the funds that came to us from the federal government, let's say you fully qualified, and the government goes, yep, you need our help. We'll give you the maximum amount. I think it was like $44,000.
Right.
If you've had a house,
it's $43,500.
Okay. Well, I adjusted for inflation because it's 2025.
Yeah. So, well, they don't.
I know. But
and there's so many qualifications. That's been the hardest part. I'm
saying, let's just say theoretically, you hit that maximum bar, you get the max payout. You can't get your house rebuilt for that. You can't. And so you've got to make all kinds of compromises. Like the average house in Burnsville is selling for just over $300K. To build
Right.
another house in Burnsville in the mountains, it's $425,000 for an. And I'm not talking about the Taj Mahal. I'm talking
Right.
about a 1,400 square foot home, like
Right.
a normal home. And
Right.
so that the kind of funding that people were able to get from the federal government was not sufficient to, in and of itself, rebuild with. I'm
That's right.
grateful for it. I'm sure everyone's grateful for it, because everything you can get, everything you can save, you should be grateful for it. You can't enjoy your life unless you express gratitude and mean it.
Right.
But there's a lot of work that has to get done, and everything's a little harder. I mean, that's why the people are so doggone tough up here. I mean,
Right.
because they grew up, they literally walked uphill both ways, right? Walking
In the
uphill is hard,
snow.
walking downhill is hard.
Yes.
One,
Yes,
one
it
is
is.
burning your hams, the other one's burning your quads. Both are blowing your knees up, and
Right.
everything. And behind my place is the Black Mountain Crest Trail. And I've been all over the world. And I feel like some of the hardest terrain I've ever been on is in my backyard. It is
It is.
insanely difficult.
It is.
And
Now
the
let's
whole
talk a
valley.
little bit about your cabin, if you don't mind, because so most, if folks don't know, I was a realtor the night of the storm. I still am a realtor, but working part-time to pay my personal bills. But I remember when your property came on the market. Your property has some great legends around here. And it is a very unique property as far as its age and its historical value here. So it's not just any kind of cabin. This is
Yeah.
a
Are
historical
you
cabin.
able to see it right now? I'm trying to share my screen.
Let's see. Let me add it. Okay, here we go. So here's Mark's cabin. This is what's the age on this baby?
1830-ish. It's everything
1830.
is subjective. There's been a cabin there since 1830. It's a little bit like George Washington's axe at the
Yeah.
Smithsonian. They say this is George Washington's axe. The handle rotted. We had to replace it, but it's still George Washington's axe. And then after
That's
that,
right.
the metal part rusted and we had to replace it, but it's still George Washington's axe. So I
And it's
think,
a beautiful holler.
it's approaching 200 years old. So it's a piece of Appalachian and American legacy. We love it. It's like you said, it's got some interesting legends around it and the property. And according to the local museum, that cold holler, as it's been called historically, has been habited by mankind for 10,000 years. So way before our ancestors came here, there was people living over there. And now, about 200 years ago, we had the Germans that came over, and this kind of looks a little bit like southern Germany, Appalachia.
Yeah.
And then they built all kinds of these really rugged cabins. But that cabin, that's the picture before the storm.
Yeah.
And
Show
I've
them
got a
out.
couple of.
Show us the after. Let us see the
Oh
next
yeah,
one.
oh yeah. Well,
Because it's
all right.
mind blowing. I mean, you're talking beautiful historic cabin.
Well,
There's
I don't know if you're able to see
oh,
that very well or
we
not,
can
but
see
that's
it.
the back
Oh.
of the cabin, and that's not even at the apogee of the storm. I mean, that's like
And you just had a tiny creek. It was just a tiny
oh
creek.
my God, it was a toes and ankles creek. It was 6 foot wide. It was 2 inches deep, right?
Yeah.
As far as the water, and then the banks were probably 4 or 5 foot deep. So you thought there's no way that'll ever go out of bank. As a matter of fact,
No.
last July, I had a friend of mine who had been a colonel in the Air Force. We were doing some shooting on my property, and he looks at it and goes, "Mark, you ever worry about that bank coming out of bounds?" And I said, "Oh, Joe, and this place has been here for 200 years. I think we're
Show us
fine."
that next one. Let's see that next one. This is the inside one, isn't it?
Yeah. And so, like, the number of times I've regretted that arrogance, that confidence, that was part of the mudslide that came in. So you look at there, there's some
right in your back
rocks
window.
Yeah. The amazing thing is, like, you can see that back window right there. I don't know what kind of single pane glass that is, but they don't make it anymore. It's insane. It's literally holding back like 5 foot of earth back there. But the other window didn't hold up, and a bunch of stuff came in, and the whole house filled
And that was
up.
almost 3 foot of you see them. It's river stone.
Oh
It's
my
rock.
God. Like, and the other thing is, I was scared to go in the house because it was soaking wet, and it had 20,000 pounds of stuff that wasn't supposed to be there. And it's a 200-year-old cabin. So I thought,
That's right.
this is the beginning of a horror movie, right? Like, I'm going to set
Right.
foot in this thing, and the earth is going to suck us down. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen.
No, it didn't. The water is insane.
Here's what the front yard looked like. And once again, that's not at apogee. That's just like 14 hours after the flood, and I've still got the Mississippi flowing through my property. It ultimately,
it was forever. It took forever for the water to stop running. Even when the rain stopped, it still kept running.
It was crazy. Now, my neighbor Kevin risked his life to take these videos. I still wasn't on the scene yet. I was actually trapped in Northern Virginia at a conference. So he risked his life. He thought that my insurance company would need this stuff for insurance. So you can't ask for a better, braver man than old Kevin. And he went over there and he took to make sure that we could document the damage. My insurance company said, hey, you don't have flood insurance, so you get nothing. But that's my fault. I didn't get flood insurance.
Well, who would have known?
Yeah,
well, even if you had it, they wouldn't have paid. They've not been paying for nobody.
3,100 foot of elevation. That's what it looked like 2 weeks afterwards. And so, you know, you look at that. I mean, that was grass, and that was my driveway, and that was my septic system, my leach field, and my utilities. And so that's what it turned out to. And you can't tell how deep that is. I mean, that's a good sized building over there, but that's about 24 foot wide and about 10 foot deep. And I have replaced all that dislocated material with almost 880 tons of granite and gravel from the granite mine right across the street from us. So I have given them a ton of money to get a driveway back. But
and it looks good. I got to go up there. It looks good.
Yeah, we can't get up to the place without a driveway, and you can't live there without water and utilities. So and then, you know, we had other environmentals too. So this is like February.
It's a bit of a winter wonderland here this morning. 20 degrees.
And I had these rock stars come in, this grading company come in, and I worked them like Hebrew slaves, and they were absolute heroes. I mean, we probably got 55 double axle dump trucks worth of material. The guy just drove back and forth in the mine continuously. And that was a blessing, being so close to the mine. And the mine, you know, was letting them get in the front of the line and reload that truck. And everyone in the valley wondered I basically bought everything in the mine over 3 days. Like I bought everything they had to refill that doggone driveway.
Wow.
And that's kind of what it looked like before. You know, that's kind of a more shocking picture. And there was other damage on the property, but the thing is, it was still kind of beautiful. Like Angela and I walked up there, we looked at it, we're like, you know, this is terrible. And we've got all kinds of maybe structural collapse and all kinds of things going on. But originally, we weren't even going to fill that in. We thought maybe we'll just find a way to live with this because it seems like it's irreparable. It's more than we can handle. And, you know, nothing's more than you can handle if you really commit to it. And this is the property. Yeah, this is what's behind us. And so I took a little panoramic of it and just to kind of show everyone what happened behind the property. That's my lovely wife, Angela.
I love her.
She's great. She's great. If you notice, she's wearing a sidearm because that's the rule in cold holler. During the day, you wear a pistol, and at night, you bring a carbine or a shotgun with a flashlight because, especially then, there was bears. You know, because the bears had been driven out of their dens, and we had, you know, refrigerator, freezer full of rotting food, and we were very, very vulnerable in those moments.
Right.
But this is if you look really closely. This gives you a sense of scale. This was I could take a leap and across this before. Before this was 7 foot wide. Now it's 24 foot wide, and this is about 140 foot long piece of granite that was exposed. And God, I mean, like probably August of 2024, I went to Cattail Creek to a friend's house, and we went back there, and they had this really cool sliding rock waterfall. And I thought, God, this is awesome. I wish I had something like this.
Right.
Once again, things you say and regret later, right?
Yeah.
So we think it's pretty cool and we're excited about it. But if you see Angela up there, you can tell, like there she is right there. That's just for scale. That gives you a sense of how big this thing really is.
Yeah.
And when we first saw it, I walked along the side of it and I was like, yeah, this is pretty amazing. Like we had this great waterfall where we didn't have one before. And the bottom of it was this pool that was collecting water. And there was a cool X piece of quartz in the granite that was about 5 foot tall. I said, look, Angela, like X marks the spot. We have like a little baptismal pool. Like, I feel like God gave us this, you know, that's great. And she goes, Mark, from the bottom looking up, it actually looks like a cross. And so that's a picture of the cross.
I love it.
Yeah. And so, you know, we feel like probably supposed to do something with that. But we think it's amazing. So we feel like we're the first human beings to have seen it, or at least the first human beings in thousands of years to see that granite face. So we felt entitled to name it, and we named it Reclamation Falls because one, I mean, that's what you do with the storm is you take everything you can back, but you also reclaim your faith and your dignity and your place in the community. And so
Right.
that last picture is, what the cabin looks like today. So it's coming right along. We've got a ton of work left to do, but we've replaced all the electrical. We've done some structural work. We replaced the driveway. We've got new septic. We got new leach field. I mean, there's 1,000 things that we've done, and there's 5,000 things left to do. But I'm very confident that we can get it all done. And
Absolutely.
we're grateful we had Christian men and women of action come up and help us. We had Samaritan's Purse come up and help us. Stephanie, at one point, I was trying to dig out the cabin by myself, and I had
3 feet of stone and silt.
Yeah, but I'm stubborn. I'm super stubborn, and we'd already with some volunteers dug out the inside. And I was like, we can do this. This is just a matter of getting mad, right?
Right.
Get mad, and and I have a bad temper, so it was working. And I'm trying to move these stones, and I got a decent sized head, and so some of these rocks are as big as my head, and I'm lifting up with a coal shovel, and I'm putting a 5-gallon bucket, and I'm hauling across the yard. And the tendons in my arm started shearing off my elbow. And I thought, my body's quitting. Like like I know what tearing tissue feels like. And this is it. And I was like, God, I can't lose the use of my arm. Then we got,
not today.
We go from bad to life-threatening.
Really
right?
bad. Right.
And I thought, I'm just mad. Like I didn't give up, but I was like, doggone it. I hate starting one thing before I finish another. Cause like I said, we've got 10,000 things to do, and I've done all this work, and I don't get to check one of those boxes as far as completed. Cause the way I think is I go from establish security first, and then work your way up to like creature comfort, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but you're inverting it. Right. And, I spiked the shovel, and I kind of, I walked around the cabin, and there's 2 men coming up the drive. And I said, hey, man, how's it going? And they go, hey, you need a hand up there? And I was still kind of like, yeah, if you got about 20 more people and some buckets, some shovels, that'd be the kind of help I need. They said, yeah. They're at the bottom of the hill. Do you need our help? And I was just like, oh, my God, like the timing,
God did that.
The timing, like it's absolutely supernatural. And and we just kept having people. I kept asking for help, because at this point, if you're prideful, you're just going to be prideful, get nothing done, and get hurt. I mean, I was right at the point where I was just like, I no longer have any pride. I'm asking everyone I know for help at this point. And we got some great people to come over and help us. And I was so grateful. And that's another reason why, like, my level of faith, I'd say I was middling to maybe above middling before.
Yeah.
But I have seen I used to think there was such a thing as coincidence, and Stephanie, I don't know that I believe in coincidences anymore, because every other day I'd have something like, God, I wish we had some help here, and whack, you or someone else would manifest something for us. Sometimes at a request, and sometimes even without a request. People just show up without you asking them. What's the likelihood of that? I mean, we're in a remote place.
Very remote. And you're way up the
mountain into Pisgah National Forest and go, hey, wonder what's back over there. But we got some massive.
God did that.
I'm so grateful for those things.
I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you for sticking with it. I'm sorry about your elbow, but that was God's way to make you stop and accept that help from those people that came to dig you out.
You're not kidding. You're not kidding.
Yeah,
and
now
the only thing I had in my kit bag was get mean, right? That's it. That's the only tool I had left. That's like, brr, and it was nowhere near sufficient.
No. Your medical kit was not going to fix that. We couldn't have sutured that. So
no time. I mean, at some point, it's not that your body's betraying you, but you get older and you can't do stuff. You just can't. No, it's just what happens. And I can't even say, even if I was 25, I don't think I know I wouldn't be able to do it without help, because it took dozens of people to help us.
Yes.
And
so many. And that's been the beautiful part, is so many organizations, so many just people say, I've got to do something. Mountain folk have showed up every single step of the way. That's who started cutting us out right away. Every man had their chainsaw out. Every man that had a tractor was out. Even men that didn't have tractors but had keys to tractors, they were borrowing other people's tractors.
Or not keys, but like screwdrivers.
It didn't matter, just to get, what we needed to do and to be able to get out. So a couple of weeks ago, you helped me I'm so thankful you and Miss Angela helped me with the Jeep into the Hollers event.
Don't forget Daniel. My son Daniel was there
And
too.
Daniel, I love Daniel. Daniel is so wonderful. But when we were prepping for that event, you helped me with the tour part of it. And you always say something profound. That is why you were my first guest, because you really understand the depth of what we're dealing with here. And we were talking about what our reality is as we move forward. What is our reality in recovery if we don't keep being hell bent
Oh
to
God,
get people
yeah.
home?
So I mean, it's uncomfortable to talk about it, but we definitely need to address it.
Yes.
So, I mentioned earlier the disparity between the existing aid and the level of help that's needed. There's a huge delta there between what we have and what we need. What we're looking at is people that have been living in this region but sometimes between 3 and 5 generations. And I bought this cabin from John and Kay Caterson. Their family was there for 3 generations, and I'm grateful they entrusted me with this property. I'm gonna run down a rabbit hole real quick. I'm coming back. During the disaster, John and Kay came up, and Kay looked around, and she looked around and she goes, "Mark, you had one job, man. All you had to do was take care of this place."
Oh, they mess with you hard.
Oh,
I love that.
I mean, like she meant it was a playful jab. It was awesome.
Right.
But the point is, like, people trust you with these things, and then you do the best you can. That's
right.
You do the best
But
you
you
can.
have honored them well. I've been in the cabin. It's incredible the amount of cleaning you have done and what you have done to restore it after what happened. And real quick, while you're on the rabbit hole,
I had that ability. I had a lot of people help. But
you did, but you were brave enough to continue, right? You were there and you were not going to give up.
It's amazing what you can do when you got no alternatives, right?
That's right.
So
what did the foundation?
You're going through hell, keep going, right?
That's right.
Don't stop and ponder.
That's right.
If you're in a firestorm, push through it. Don't stop and go,
right.
I wonder what the best way to do this is. Push through it.
Push through it. So you had a contractor come out, and he talked about if he had to take down the house.
Oh yeah.
What'd he say?
Yeah, well, I wasn't even there that day. We had an older fellow, one of the volunteers from a group from South Carolina came up, and he was literally a foundation guy, and he had to, force his way into the root cellar because there was so much earth against the back of the door. And he went out there and he came back, and what he said was, "I don't even know how you tear this place down." He's like, honestly, like whoever built it, incredible. And so those old Huns, they probably didn't even speak English, but they knew how to build something, and they stacked the rock and they tied it into the living mountain. So it's anchored into the mountain, and then the 20-inch thick beams are all dovetailed together. So if you're going to move one, you have to move them all. And that's modern stick-built home, or maybe even a brick facade, I don't think could have taken that kind of force for that kind of duration. But
it's pretty powerful. It's pretty amazing. It did. It survived.
And I'm coming back to what we talk about.
We have to, because I don't want to run out of time. We've got some still big stuff to talk about.
I want to share one thing.
Okay.
There was a local fellow named Daniel that came in, and he had a mini excavator, and he dropped behind the cabin on a 60-degree slope in an excavator, which to me looked like suicide. Right. And he got in, and he built himself a track to get in. And once he was back there, he was trapped. He trapped himself back there, and he moved rocks one by one until he forced the water back into its original path. And then he built himself a path out, and then he cut me a temporary driveway, and he did it in like 7 hours. The guy was like, he's crazy, but thank God for him. I mean, literally the cabin was lost, and then one courageous, highly skilled man dropped in, and he saved it. So I hope everyone had a Daniel that helped.
Right. Amen. Thank you, Daniel.
That said, you really wanted me to talk about like what the impact is, and I
want folks to understand what our reality here is for our current recovery process and our long term, because to me, I see so much devastation on a daily. I have so many projects that are just, they don't know what to do, they don't know where to go, they're denied by FEMA, denied by insurance, denied by
it's super frustrating. It's super frustrating. Like, you talk to someone, they're like a bureaucrat, and I mean, even people that are well-intentioned, if they can't help you, they can't help you. But my concern is this: we've got families that have been here for 3 to 5 generations. The household income in Burnsville is hovering around $40,000 a year. You get a $43,000, maximum amount of help from the government, but you have your family home and land. Your land's been ravaged. Your job is maybe revolving around your land. Many employers shut down, so there's a massive economic impact. And then you got a home that's only quasi-livable in. Like over winter, we had people living in homes, but setting up tents inside their homes so they'd have, dry places to be, another layer of environmental protection. So my concern is this, is that someone comes in, says the house is unlivable, your kids aren't safe there. So, maybe you have child protective services, once again, they're well-intentioned groups. They want to keep your family safe, but your family's in jeopardy of being dislocated. And you can lose your family lands for the sake of not having, the ability to recover your home, because you work as much as you want. How many people in this country could replace their home out of their savings? That's probably less than 1% would have that kind of capacity to do that. And those people really aren't the ones that are living in Appalachia. There's people that just work for a living there, right? And so that's my concern, is that we lose some of these core families with grit and character and candor, and that we lose the bits and pieces that make Burnsville and Spruce Pine and Old Fort and Bat Cave and Little Swiss and Pensacola, Micaville, all these places. They've got people there that are so special, and if we lose them, we've lost more than I can even calculate. And so that's really what I was driving at, is that we're at this inflection point, and there's so much risk in the next, probably 12 months of, if we don't get people back in, get them back established, get them, off of the life support and back into the fight, so to speak.
Right.
I think
back in their home, back in their life.
Yeah, we face a really, really unfortunate, in my opinion, cataclysmic character change for this region. I don't want this to be a big box store, fast food restaurant suburb of a big city. It's a special place. These are special places with special people. We want to be able to preserve that for generations to come. And I'm proud that I have some small part of that. And I'm trying hard to earn my place in the community to be worthy of this place. I love it. I love it. But that's what we're talking about. And that's my concern. That's my big concern. And so we've made such incredible inroads, but we still have a long way to go. We still need some help from folks. We really do.
We do. So we've talked about a little bit about, what you've experienced, how our infrastructure is starting to come back together. But we know that the reality is we still have so many displaced families, so many people not home. But beyond that, the trauma. Right. So some of the things that I wasn't ready for. So last week I did, a podcast. It was just me and telling my story and rebuilding Hollers and how we got started and everything. And the truth is, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for the flashbacks and the photos and stepping back those 8 months. And so after the podcast ended, I kind of had to come apart. Like it just all come pouring back, because all of us are so much in survival, move forward mode, that we're not taking the time to step back and process what has happened. Because we're some are not ready. Some are still, sometimes once we get a family home, then they're off of life support. Like you said, that's a great analogy. So now they're off life support, but now they have to deal with what they've been through. And so that's a whole nother element. And I know in the military,
that's a monster. And we try to deal with it. World War I, they called it shell shock. World War II, they called it cowardice and shell shock. And then after that, after people came back from Vietnam, they started kind of acknowledging, like, hey, when you have traumatic incidences and you try to suppress it, it comes boiling out at inopportune moments. Like you're not going to be able to shed it. And so when I was living in rural South Carolina in the Army, during the war, I basically, in the middle of the war, I got to go to grad school, and I had all these vets come and explore and like, hey man, isn't there a war going on? What are you doing hanging out in South Carolina? And I said, they gave me a year to get a master's degree. And so I met a bunch of these veterans, and many of them had had trials from Korea, World War II, and Vietnam with PTSD. And the way to deal with it isn't by keeping it bottled up. You have to acknowledge there's a problem. And it seemed like the group therapy and talking about it in public places is the only way there's something counterintuitive about sharing your agony. You would think it would be multiplied, but somehow understanding that other people understand it, that seems to have some capacity to alleviate the worst of the symptoms. But we are going through something as a community, And I see people that react differently. There's some listlessness, there's some depression, there's some inactivity, there's some anger, that people that don't normally express those emotions or express those emotions in that way. I've seen it. And we were talking about this earlier this week, and there's been suicides as well. And
We've lost 5 people in Western North Carolina in the last 2 weeks to
yeah, and
suicide.
one of them was a good friend of ours.
I'm so sorry.
It's incredibly difficult to talk about.
Yes.
And I don't want to talk about it, but if we don't talk about it, people don't understand.
People don't understand. They don't understand how traumatizing this has been to our community. And, the goal being that if we can talk about it, we can't lose anybody else. We've already lost so much. We've lost so many homes. We've lost so many, 7,000 structures in just one county, one small county that has 19,000 souls living in it. We lost people during the storm. We're still losing people after the storm. And it is a real struggle. It is, and we don't want to lose anybody. But what I want to be able to talk about and understand is because I'm a civilian, right? I've never been in the military. Man, in my family since the American Revolution has been. I've never been.
I would go to war with you. I would definitely go to war with you.
Yeah, I'm in. I'm in.
We agreed I wouldn't use any profanity on your broadcast, but you're a tough cookie.
Yeah, so I don't play a lot, but I feel like I have my own moments too. I do my best to not be like boohoo or whatnot. So I find different outlets to get out my sadness or to get out my frustrations because of everything that I'm still working. I feel like in my pocket, I have everybody's story. In my heart, I have everybody's story. And so I try to carry it in a way that is protective to them, but I know they have to get it off their chest. But it's very powerful to learn how to process that. And so that's still something I've got to work on. And so I feel like even though this is a most sensitive subject, I want to talk about it. I want to talk about what is the best way to help people. What is the best way for us to make sure that no one is, if they are contemplating the tapping out or they're contemplating different things, what is the best way to reach them? And I mean, for me, I started dealing with people that had suicidal thoughts immediately. My neighbors, they would come to me. They have lost everything. They have a family to support. They have children looking to them. They have wives looking to them. They have lost everything and don't know where to go. And so they were, tears running down their face. Steph, I can't do this. I can't do this. My immediate reaction was just to wrap them in a big hug and say, oh, we got this. I just had to very much be, no, we got this. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. But I'm no doctor. I'm just a realtor with a construction background, but I've never wanted anybody
that compassion has healing beyond what medical practice. They call it a practice for a reason, right? It's not perfected yet, but being considerate and listening and compassionate does a lot. And you most of the time when something's up with somebody. I think I also want to kind of mention that there's people from the outside that haven't experienced this, and they have these almost glib type of responses, and they're not trying to be cruel. They just literally don't understand.
They don't understand.
And I think I hope that people are able to communicate internally, but also understand people that weren't here for this. If they have like kind of a glib response, they don't understand it. We need to be patient with them and extend some grace, because I do think that there's noble intent there. It's just that, how do you describe, if you put your hand on a stove, you've been burned, it's hard to describe the amount of pain that you experience from putting your hand on that stove. And we've done that, most of us emotionally, and been burned very badly here.
Very deeply. For me, my favorite place in the world.
And we want to be patient with our volunteers and be patient and as best we can with our leaders, our elected leaders, because, no one's ever going to do everything that you want them to do. But I do think that they're trying mightily.
Right. And I think we're starting to see a little bit better. They're saying that there's some money coming. They're saying there's going to be different things available. We are making progress on some private bridges, so there's things happening, but it is so small as far as impactful for families, because like you
Mhm.
said, the state has to build the roads back. They have to make sure we have power. They have to make sure we have these things. But there's a lot of things they don't have to make sure we have. Once the power, for example, is to the house, well, if your neutral got ripped out of your house, or the power got ripped out of your house, they don't
Yeah.
have to fix that.
No,
That's $2,000.
that's where their responsibility comes to an end. And you as a homeowner, that's where you get turned on. And if you don't have the mechanism to do it, that's where you've got to get some help. And that's kind of the genesis of rebuilding Hollers.
Right, right.
Mhm.
And that's exactly how we're trying to support, so many different projects to get them going. But, there is very much an emotional level to this. And when people come in so many times now, especially now, we're 8 months into this disaster, this war zone that we still live in. And they come in and they look me dead in the eye and they say, "You're my last hope. You're my last resort. I've tried everybody and nobody can help me. Nobody will help me." And it's for different reasons.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of has qualifications. The big guys, you have to qualify, right? So it may be income based, it may be religious based. There's just so many different organizations and their requirements. And for us, we have the least amount of requirements, but we're also the tiniest. I mean, we're like this big. We're so tiny and in our capabilities, but in our determination is huge. Like you're
We are
not going to
small but
stop
mighty.
me.
We are small but mighty.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so it's definitely trying to, I don't want to let anybody down. I don't want to see anybody fail. I don't want to see anybody feel like they have no hope, or anything like that, because we're seeing a lot of that. And even 8 months later, where there's still people coming. I mean, so last week I only had 51 total rebuilds, but this week now I think I'm up to 53 because 2 came in this week that are ready to start building. But they've hit a brick wall at every obstacle as they try to start building.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's so much more to say. I think we're down in the short final.
Russ actually said, he said we don't have to stop all the way at an hour. If there's more things we want to talk about, that we can. If there's, any other kind of finishings up, or if anybody out there watching with us, thank y'all for staying with us. If you have any questions for us, because I think this all it matters very much into how we're can recover and keep rebuilding. I believe for me, and I've always said this, I've got 5 years in me. That's what I got. I'm 8 months into 5 years. But because I want to go back into the woods, right? I want to be able to float my river again, but every place that I love and every place that I have found peace and happiness in my soul is destroyed.
Yeah, but
It's
Stephanie,
destroyed.
this isn't a sprint. This is the ultimate marathon. I mean, it's not even 26.2 miles. It's 1,000,000 miles. You've got to pace yourself. All of us have got to pace ourselves. And if we get on that hamster wheel and run to exhaustion, then us and the community are lost. So we've got to pace ourselves. We got to reinforce each other wherever we can, and we got to spend some time in prayer. And I know you're doing that, and I know I'm doing it. But people that are listening, I hope they
He
keep
carries me. I've been so thankful for God's presence and all of this. And I don't even think I would have come out of the holler if he didn't tell me to. But, when I realized how much the suffering was going on in my community, there was no other response or reaction that we could have. But we still have to let people continue to know how bad it is, what our devastation looks like, and how long it's going to take us to get there. I was back in Relief, Huntdale Poplar, and talking to one of the neighbors, and they're going to be able to so the temporary roads are in, but then there's a 3-year plan to rebuild all the roads on the Mitchell County side. So they're bringing in big contractors. So like even our construction on these roads is going to take so long to get all the the good back.
It's sort of like, how long does it take to make a baby? Like, if you work twice as hard, you don't get it in half the time. It still takes 9 months. And these roads are kind of the ultimate mechanism in and out. That was like Rome's crowning glory, was the road. That's how they moved things in. That's how they moved out. That's how they maintained their influence in the life of the community. They're incredibly important to us. And right now, like you said, we had farmers with front end loaders in many instances building pretty good roads. But we need,
They're building
in
great
this
roads.
environment, we need the best roads that technology can provide. So we've got the resilience and endurance in order to persevere.
Right. Because if something were to come again, something like that,
We got
Kay says we don't want
to build
Burnsville to
back
be
super
swallowed up
strong.
by Asheville. And that's
Mhm.
true. I mean, Kay, we are dead center. Our topography, we are dead center between Asheville and Boone. Burnsville is the most perfect. Burnsville, Spruce Pine, Yancey, and Mitchell County is the most perfect remote community in between Asheville and Boone. It takes about 2 hours to go from one to the other.
Now,
And
are you sure we got more time? Because I want to brag on what I saw in Burnsville. Do I
yeah,
have a
let's talk
minute?
about it. Yeah, he said we got it. Let's talk
So when
about
I
it.
was in Afghanistan, I was in Bagram for months, and I was on the airfield. And there's always a rotary wing asset taking off and landing. There's a ton of activities, a ton of
A
dirt.
helicopter for people like
Yeah,
me.
yeah, a helicopter, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then when I was working with John Caterson and the volunteer firefighters, and I was trying to support what I could when I could, I saw more helicopters coming in, landing, and taking off than I've ever seen in my life. There's this amazing diaspora of great people with resources, evacuating people from cattail, moving in assets, bringing in all kinds of things. And the thing is, like, normally all of that has to be deconflicted by someone on the airfield. They call them the air boss, and the air boss is saying, all right, you come in, this is your heading, this is your position, you have this amount of time on target. None of that was happening. They were just really good pilots flying in, landing in high winds in pretty small landing zone with about 20 different nomenclature of helicopters landing. Crews are running in, getting people off, and then they're taking off and then going back and grabbing more people. And it was just rinse, wash, repeat for days on end. We talk about volunteers sometimes in a condescending note. I will tell you, I have supported the best units that our country has, the most professional of the professionals. I don't know that I've ever seen anyone work together better. Like the maturity and the grace and when it's your community and the hours that people will work because it's their livelihood and their friends and their family. I've never seen a more professional group of people. I mean, I'm still like, I'm blown away. And when I called my employer, I'm like a couple weeks into like, whatever that kind of leave is, not bereavement leave, but like I'm paid time off.
I mean, mine's a sabbatical.
And I was telling about this, and I'm like tearing up, like talking about the bravery of the people in these communities.
Right.
And I said, when do I have to come back to work? And Chris Tedford said, it sounds like you're doing God's work. Keep doing it.
I love that.
Over and over again, people have just really, really, really bent over backwards, turned themselves to a pretzel to try and help us. And I'm grateful for it. I know we're all grateful for it. We just need a little bit more help, and a little bit more support.
Right. We do. We've got to keep bringing up people, that we need help. We're nowhere near done. I was joking with someone this morning. I said, if $1 million showed up tomorrow, I could still spend that in a week. And we have that many projects going on. There's so much going on that we have to work on. I don't want to say there's not an end in sight, because that's
we're
not
still going to put that slip and slide, that giant pool slide up in my property.
No. That's all about you just got to wear jeans to ride it down. I had one of those back at my family farm. It's perfect. We're not going to touch it.
Yeah.
It's going to be
jeans
great.
and an adamantium spine, right?
Yeah. You just, in youth, right? I mean, we're old now. So the rock slides are the best.
Yeah. Do you want me to close in prayer, or are we still rolling?
I would say that if you have, I do want to hear your last words. And then if you'll close us in prayer. But I do want to say I'm so thankful that you joined us tonight. Thank you for talking about the hard stuff with me, because as we progress, people need to know. They got to know. So thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks a ton. I'm going to close in prayer, and then I just have a real quick closing comment, or I'll have a closing comment. We've had some amazing work that's been done. There's certainly more to be done. And we really want to come out of this storm stronger and more capable than we went into it. We're going to need to be stronger and more capable. We have the right community. We just need the diaspora to continue to kind of plug in and give us that assistance. And so we want to come through this storm and every storm, metaphorically and literally stronger than we were before. So, dear Heavenly Father, as we conclude this podcast, we lift up our voices in gratitude for the work of the Rebuilding Hollers Philanthropy. Thank you for the opportunity to come together as a community, united in love and purpose. We ask for your continued blessings on our efforts to rebuild and restore. May the strides we take foster hope and resilience in every heart, reminding us that together we are stronger. We pray for the leaders of our country and our county. We ask for your guidance and wisdom in their decision-making. May they lead with compassion and integrity, prioritizing the well-being of all of our citizens. As we part ways, instill in us a spirit of collaboration and service so that we may carry forth the mission of love and support in all that we do. In your holy name, amen.
All right. Amen. We lost Mark there at the very end, but I want to tell y'all, I've been so thankful for Mark. Since the moment he walked into Rebuilding Hollers, he has been determined to rebuild. We've been so proud of him, and we're so thankful to stand with him and 497 other projects that we have going on. And we need your help to continue telling our story, to continue helping us get resources. I've been working on some really cool projects that I'm most excited to launch. Some collaborations with other organizations, because it's not just Rebuilding Hollers. There's so many incredible organizations out there that want to help us, and we want to work with them. We need them, and we want to be their friend. We want them to be our friend. So I'm most thankful for that. We are also always selling merch. Y'all know you can get the t-shirts. We've got the hoodies. Of course, it's summertime, so you're not really ready for those. We've got some fantastic hats. And tomorrow on Saturday, we will be at the Spruce Pine Alien Festival. Our booth will be right in front of Miss Mabel's store. That's Rocks and Things. So we're excited to be there. We'll be selling merchandise, telling folks all about our projects. And remember, anything that you buy there, that goes to building materials and paying local contractors. I have a ton of projects that need my support. I cannot let them down, and I need your help to do that. So I will be so thankful in any way that you can help us. Praying is always a great way. Fundraising. We had, oh my gosh, I need to tell you about this little fella. He's 13 years old, had his bar mitzvah 2 weeks ago, did a big hike for Helene. He raised $7,000 for us. A 13-year-old boy. That's incredible. So many members of our community. My friend Linda that has wrote the book, The Days the Mountain Cried. We have another author coming to stand with us that has written some stuff, and she's going to be publishing it and bringing her sales to us. We also have a local artist doing some Helene paintings. So there's so many ways that you can help us raise money to rebuild. It is of most importance. I promise I'm not going to stop trying, because this community means the world to me, and we have to get them home. So in that, thank you so much for loving me. Thank you so much for loving my community. I'll see y'all later. The hardest part isn't the knowing. It isn't knowing everything that you have to do to get everything back right. The hardest part are the memories. Knowing exactly how it used to look before the storm. That's the hardest part.